Welcome to the Real Estate Syndication Show. Whether you are a seasoned investor or building a new real estate business, this is the show for you. Whitney Sewell talks to top experts in the business. Our goal is to help you master real estate syndication. And now your host, Whitney Sewell.
Are you a new or experienced investor wanting to learn how to have a successful syndication business? Learn from the nation's leading syndication expert, my friend, Vinny Smile Chopra. He has created a multifamily academy where you will learn everything about deal analyzing to selecting emerging markets, managing assets, and much more. In the academy, you'll find over 500 lectures and templates to help you run a successful syndication business. Your membership also gives you access to Vinny every Wednesday through masterminding and coaching calls. Vinny came to the U.S. with only $7 and now is a CEO of 5 companies, acquiring and managing a portfolio of more than 3,500 units. He's completed 26 successful syndications ranging from 50 to 500 units and created a portfolio valued over $200 million in commercial real estate. He built the academy to teach and mentor investors like you to succeed. To learn more about the Multifamily Academy, text LEARN, L-E-A-R-N, to 474747 or call his team at 925-766-3518. This is your daily real estate syndication show. I'm your host, Whitney Sewell. Today, our guest is Zach Haptonstall. Thanks for being on the show, Zach.
Hey, good morning, Whitney. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. Very grateful for this opportunity.
Thank you. And I'm really looking forward to getting into Zach's story. I think most of the listeners are going to relate to him and what he's done, or you're going to aspire to want to do what he's done over the last year. I mean, he's a multifamily sponsor and syndicator based in Phoenix, Arizona. He's the founder and president of ZH Multifamily, founder and host of Phoenix Multifamily Meetup, a successful meetup with experienced multifamily speakers each month. He's a founder and teacher of 35 Below, a financial education class for young professionals through the Arizona Real Estate Investors Association. Closed his first multifamily deal in February of 2019, a 36 unit, $3.4 million. Currently has $31 million of multifamily assets under contract. 3 properties, 272 units in Phoenix and Scottsdale, Arizona. Scheduled to close, maybe you can explain, scheduled to close in August. Combination of syndication and tenant in common deals. So Zach, that's impressive what you've done over this last little bit. I'm looking forward to getting into your story, but give us a little more about your background, who you are, and in case the listeners haven't heard of you.
Yeah, of course. So I was born and raised here in Phoenix. So I pretty much lived here my entire life. I lived in Colorado for a bit. I had a football scholarship, and I realized I wasn't going to make it to the NFL, so I came back. I wanted to be a sports reporter, so I actually got a bachelor's degree in journalism and broadcasting from Arizona State University here, and I was actually a live news anchor and sports reporter on Arizona PBS for about 6 months, and I hosted a show on Fox Sports Network Arizona, and it was cool being on TV at first, but then you quickly realize you don't make any money doing that. You work crazy hours. It's very political. And I was like, man, I just got this degree and I don't want to do this. So I was very discouraged. Prior to that, I was delivering medical equipment nights and weekends to pay for school. My boss was like, hey, man, you can make good money doing healthcare marketing. So I just gotten this fancy, expensive degree with student debt. And I said, okay, I'm not going to do journalism. And I got a job, of all things, as a hospice marketer. So I don't know if you're familiar with hospice care, Whitney, but just for the listeners, it's basically like end-of-life care, like mobile nursing and caregiving for people with terminal illnesses. So my job was to wake up in the morning, drive all around Phoenix, and just walk in cold to like hospitals, doctors' offices, assisted living, and build relationships with physicians, social workers, nurses, etc. When they had a patient who needed hospice, they call me. I go meet with the family and patient and get them signed up on services. So it sounds kind of weird, but hospice is actually an extremely competitive and lucrative private business industry. Okay, there's a lot of money in it, and Phoenix is the #1 market in the country just because it's sunny and a lot of people come here to retire. So long story short, I was very blessed to do very well with the hospice marketing, and I came from a lower middle class family, like never had money in our family or anything, and I was quickly rising up in this company. I became the director of marketing, and then I became an owner in the company over about a 4.5-year span. I got my MBA. I paid off all my school cash. I bought a house. So I was very blessed at a young age, my early 20s, making like $200K plus a year. I'm doing really well, but I was getting burnt out. I was working like 60 plus hours a week. on call 7 days a week doing something I wasn't passionate about. And I didn't even care about the money anymore. I was getting taxed heavily on commission. So last January 2018, I said, screw it. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't know what I want to do, but I don't have any time to even figure it out. And so I knew I wanted to create passive income somehow and gain control back of my time. So I literally, January 2018, I said, okay, I'm done. And I resigned. I sold my equity in the company. I had literally no plan. I didn't know anybody in real estate. I'd gotten my real estate license like 2 years prior and never used it. It was like a backup plan type of deal. And so I basically wake up every morning like, okay, what do I do now? I had enough savings. I said, I'm going to live off savings for the next 12 months. And I'm going to figure out how to make passive income off of real estate somehow. And I wasn't even thinking multifamily necessarily. I was just thinking passive income. And so kind of like the cliche story, I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and I kind of shifted my mindset, just like everybody says. I started consuming as much real estate content as I could. I was just reading all the books, all the podcasts. And so 3 months into it, March of 2018, I'm looking at mobile home parks. And so literally I cold called over 90 mobile home park owners here in Phoenix as I was trying to buy one on a seller carry. And I found one that looked like a great deal, but I was terrified. I had analysis paralysis. And I waited like 4 weeks until I finally called the broker. And he says, oh, we got that under contract yesterday. And I was like, crap. And so I kind of got discouraged. But anyways, I kept going. And then I started learning about multifamily and syndication. And because a lot of my network is made up of physicians and healthcare business owners from my days in hospice, it just seemed like a much more attractive asset class that they would get into as opposed to the mobile home parks, because they all hate their lives too. They're working crazy hours. They have families that couldn't get out of it. I'm fortunate. Grace and I, my fiance, we don't have kids yet. We plan to have several, but so I knew this was my shot. So I was like, okay, let's dive straight into multifamily. And I finally decided I'm just going to stay focused. So I started really consuming all that. And I just started cold calling property managers, brokers, lenders, attorneys, everything to try to build a team, and started really learning the process that way. So 6-7 months go by at this point, Whitney, and I've made no money, mind you. I'm burning through savings. So I've lost all the confidence I had before. I have like an identity crisis. Wake up every morning like, okay, how can I move forward today? Like, what do I do to be productive to move the needle? I go to a conference in Dallas, and I join a mentorship program. And basically it's a very valuable network of people. So I spend a ton of money. I join this mentorship program. And I'm like, okay, now I have resources of people who I can partner with and raise capital from to do a deal. Well, that was July of last year, so almost a year ago now. And 3 more months passed by and I didn't find a deal. So I'm even more discouraged. I'm like, I just blew all this money. Well, fortunately, I met a guy in the group. He's got high net worth, high liquidity, which I don't, and I needed that to sign on a loan. So we decided to partner up, and he's local here in Phoenix as well. We find a 36-unit deal in Phoenix that fortunately penciled, and we were just shocked. So we put in an offer, and then the offer gets accepted, and we're like, oh, crap, what do we do now? We were just terrified because we don't know what to do the next step. So we get under contract, and we're like, okay, we have this deal under contract now. It was a $3.4 million deal here in Phoenix. We needed to raise about 1.4 million. And so we were just going to do like a small syndication. And so we're like 30 days into it, and we're past the inspection period. So we're talking about raising money. And I get a call from a lady, her name is Elisa. She lives in Seattle. We had several phone calls since then, but we had never really met in person. And she's also part of this network. And she's like, hey, I heard you have this deal under contract. I said, how'd you hear about that? And she's like, well, just through the grapevine. And I said, well, yeah, do you want to help us raise money? And she's like, sure, I could. She looked at the deal and she underwrote it. She thought it was a good deal. She's like, how about instead, I'm selling a 12-unit deal in Seattle and it's closing 2 weeks prior to your deal. Why don't I just 1031 exchange my 12-unit into your 36-unit and we can do a tenant in common, a tick structure? And I said, that sounds great, but what the hell is a tick structure? So we figure out the tick structure, and she brings a big chunk of equity. And long story short, we close on that deal earlier in February this year. And so we were very blessed to have done that. And I fortunately, I was kind of the point person for all the communication with the broker, the lender, the attorney. So I learned a lot throughout that process. And what everybody says about doing the first deal is true. It's kind of like you're in the club, so to speak. Like for me, it was getting a monkey off my back. You know what I mean? Because you spend a year of making no money and going to all these meetups and listening to podcasts and reading the books. You feel like you're a real estate investor. But until you actually have a deal, it's like you're not really a real estate, you know what I mean? And so it's kind of like you get the monkey off your back, you're in the club. And so since then, we've been super fortunate. We started just pounding the pavement like the next week. And we found a portfolio that was an on-market deal, and that one penciled as well. And so we got that under contract. Fortunately, it's 2 properties, a 76 unit, which we are doing a traditional syndication, just like you do, Whitney, and then a 59 unit in Scottsdale, which we're doing another tenant in common, a tick structure. So we're all done with our equity raise, and we're just waiting to close on that one. And then just last week, we got a 137 unit, $17.5 million deal under contract here in Phoenix. And so we're doing our webinar this week, and so we've been cranking. So we've been very fortunate to catch that momentum and kind of ride that wave since we caught that first deal.
Nice. So many things I want to ask you about. I've been making some notes here, but I want to go way back
Sure.
to even you quitting your job. And, you didn't have a mentor or like a coach at that time, I don't think. But, you left this, $200,000 a year salary and just said, okay, I'm going to quit. I'm going to make it happen. But walk me through that just a little bit about, I know there's listeners that are struggling with maybe the same decision. But, how were you so confident that, okay, I'm going to make this happen. I've got a year to do it.
Yeah. And the thing is, I wasn't that confident, Whitney. It was kind of like every day, it was like there was a lot of indecision, and I was kind of learning as I went along. I just had been unhappy for like over a year, almost 2 years in that job. And I was always chasing, I had a very large 6-figure salary, and I was chasing commissions all the time, but it was just kind of empty. You know what I mean? It was very transactional. So once I started learning about passive income and how to offset taxes and things like that, I knew that this was my long-term play. Even it's a mind shift, right? Because it's nice getting those fat checks every 2 weeks and saving it and stacking it up. And all of a sudden I'm the opposite. It's just burning through, and it's a mind shift. And you have to just think, okay, this is for the long term. So yeah, every day I would wake up and I was trying to somehow be productive, whether it's reading, whether it's listening to a podcast like yours, which I've listened to several of, cold calling people and meeting with them. And so yeah, that was kind of how I progressed through that.
Great. And you mentioned like staying focused on multifamily. I know you mentioned a mobile home park, but why multifamily? Why did you say, okay, I'm going to focus on multifamily?
Yeah, I kind of got to the point where I was reading about single family homes, and I was like, no, I don't really want to do that. I really do like mobile home parks, and I still want to get into that space. But once I learned about syndication, that's when the lights went on. You know what I mean? Because I never thought I could take down a big building, and I was very intimidated by multi-million dollar signs. You know what I mean? And so the more I read and more podcasts I listened to, it gives you confidence because you hear people talking about that they can do it, and they come from backgrounds where they had no idea about it. So for me, I was like, okay, my background is in sales and marketing, and I feel like I can build strong relationships. So if I can find good assets and be kind of a steward of other people's money to help them and bring these deals together, that just seemed very exciting. And it got to the point where, like, when I was like 3-4 months into it, I was like, screw it. Like, I have nothing to lose at this point. I've already like thrown everything, but I kind of burned my ships, so to speak. You know what I mean? As Napoleon Hill would say, Think and Grow Rich. I kind of like said, I'm not going to turn back, so I might as well just go big and see what happens. And this whole process was just a mind shift. You know what I mean? This was growth, and me going through a lot of personal adversity. And so that's kind of how that process went.
No, that's awesome. You did burn the ships, that's for sure, and you just dove in. But you mentioned, like that first deal didn't come for 9 months. Is that right? So,
right, right.
I would imagine, it was like, oh no, you were thinking, oh no, is this really going to happen? What am I doing? Tell me, how did you start? What was some of the first signs or first things you did to start creating traction?
Yeah. So the turning point for me, honestly, was like, and this goes for all the listeners out there who I'm sure can relate, is like, you can read all the books and you can listen to all the podcasts, but until you start taking action in regards to talking to brokers and meeting with people, you're not going to have the confidence to actually feel like you're in this industry. And so the big turning point for me was calling up brokers and meeting with them. And it was terrifying, honestly. And my background was in sales, so I'm used to like cold call walking into people, but I was like so terrified and had anxiety to do that. But I started calling these property management companies, and I would wear my best suit, Whitney, and look professional and look good and fake it till I make it. You know what I mean? I asked them all these questions and act like I'm legitimate and tell my background and say I have a small group of physicians, which I had like 2 who were interested in investing, but make it sound like you have like this big backing behind you. So they take you seriously, because people don't want their time to be wasted. You know what I mean? But you have to get in somehow and kind of show that confidence. And so I would meet these property manager companies. They say, hey, do you know any brokers or lenders who you can refer me to? And so they'll give me a list of brokers or lenders. I'll call the broker, say, hey, I got your hey, John, I got your name and number from Tom, property manager, and start meeting with those brokers and give you confidence. And so at least they then know your name, and you've sat down and met with them, and they start to take you a little bit seriously. And then you start getting some deals sent to you, and they may be crappy deals. They may be on the market. And at first I was scared to even tour, because I was like, oh, I'm not a serious investor. I don't belong here. I don't want to waste these guys' time. But what I've learned over time, over this last year, is that you need to crank as many tours as you possibly can, because these brokers want to tour you. As long as they don't think you're 100% wasting their time, if they think you have any drip of credibility, they want to show their sellers that they're touring and marketing the property, right? And for you as an investor, the benefit is you get out there on the property, you get to learn, and you get to know the broker. So when we're looking for a deal, we're touring at least 3 to 5 properties a week. And some of these properties we know on the front end, we've underwritten them, and they're crappy properties, Whitney. Like we don't even want to buy them. But I'll go in there, I'm taking pictures and taking notes, and I know the whole OM, and I'm talking about the deal with the broker so that they take you seriously. And I always wear a tie, little things like that. For me, it's all a perception thing with the brokers. So that's kind of what really started getting me going and made me feel like, okay, I know how to talk to these guys. I'm not intimidated anymore.
Great advice. I love how you mentioned, you're touring 3 to 5 properties a week. I mean, you're really getting out there and I mean, making it happen. But developing the relationships with those brokers, it's not going to happen by listening to the podcast, right? I mean, it's just not. You're going to be better educated when you get there, but eventually you got to do it. And so
100%.
And you also mentioned like always wearing a tie, and that's been a big part of myself as well. I try to always, if I'm out doing stuff like that, I'm always wearing a tie. But I've seen the complete opposite in the industry as well. I mean, just completely as relaxed as possible. And while it doesn't seem to be tied always to success, right?
Right.
But some people choose one way or the other. And you mentioned this tick structure. Tenant in common. And would you elaborate on that a little bit? There's probably listeners who have not heard of that before, but tell us, what is that?
Yeah, most people aren't familiar with the tick structure. So the best way I would explain a tick structure is, say, for example, Whitney, you and I were going to partner on a deal. Like, let's just say you have 500K and I have 500K, and we want to go buy a deal together. Well, instead of doing like a traditional partnership, you and I could buy that deal as tenants in common, TIC, which is tick. So you would be a tenant in common, you'd be one tick, and I'd be a tenant in common, I'd be one tick. Okay, so we can buy that deal together. And basically, in a tenant in common, everybody is active legally. So every partner is legally active, and it's unanimous voting. Okay, so even if you put in 900K and you own 90% of the deal, and I put in 100K and I own 10% of the deal, every decision we need to agree on unanimously. So you need to trust your partners. It's different than a syndication. You need to very trust your partners and have clearly defined roles. And so basically for asset protection purposes, you'd want to put your tenant in common, your tick, into an LLC, and I'll put mine into an LLC. So you'll have a tick LLC and I'll have a tick LLC. And the cool thing about these tenant in common is that you can 1031 exchange into them and you can 1031 exchange out of them. So for example, in this deal that we have, I have 3 primary partners. Okay. So one, her name is Elisa. She did a 1031 exchange of that 12 unit into the deal and brought a bunch of equity. And the rule with the 1031 exchange is you can't change like the partners in it going in. You cannot like penetrate that LLC, so to speak. Okay. So she's one tenant in common. I'm a manager of my tenant in common. So I'm the second tick LLC. And then there's a third, Robert, and he's a tick LLC. So altogether, we have 1.4 million of equity. And the cool thing is you're probably thinking, oh, well, 3 people brought that much? No. So each one of us is a manager of our LLC, and you can have members inside of your LLC. So I've got 4 members in my LLC. Robert has 2 members in his, and then Elisa has 1 in hers. So whatever the math is, we have like 7 or 8 total people, right? And legally everybody's active. But for the most part, these members, they don't want to play a big role. And so if you've got close family or friends, you can put them in as members inside your tenant in common, and you're kind of like a steward of their money. And this is a 10-year fixed non-recourse Freddie Mac small balance loan. Okay, and so Freddie Mac requires you have a max of 5 tick LLCs, and each one needs to be manager managed with 1 manager. Okay, so you have 1 manager. So the cool thing is inside of my LLC, with my money and my 3 partners in my LLC, the 4 of us, we have 440K of equity. Okay. And then the other two, whatever they add up to, altogether we have 1.4. So when we exit this deal, and it's doing great, we're very fortunate. We're on pace to double our money and exit by first quarter of 2020. So within 12 months, we should double our money. We can take our 1.4, and if we turn that into 2.8 million by doubling it, we can all choose to 1031 exchange together, the 3 LLCs, into the next tick deal. So we can take our 2.8 and we can go buy like an $8 to $10 million deal in like a B area. Because right now we're like in a C area, like a value add area. Our goal is all passive income. So we can 1031 exchange, go buy like an $8 to $10 million deal. Well, what you've done now is you've basically 1031 exchanged and you've deferred those capital gains and leveraged them into a bigger deal, which will then create more passive income for everybody. So that's the cool thing. The second option is, say, for whatever reason, we say, hey guys, it's been great. You two other TIC LLC partners, the 3 of us have been doing great, but I don't want to partner with you guys. When we sell, what we can also choose to do is the 3 separate TIC LLCs can all separately 1031 exchange into 3 separate deals. So in my LLC, I've got 440K. If we turn that into 880K, I could go buy like a $3 to $4 million deal, and we just own it with our 1 LLC and cash flow it that way. So it's kind of cool because it gives you a lot more flexibility. And since we've done it, we have all these people reaching out to us saying, hey, we got 500K, we got $1 million that we sold a single family home, or like California people a lot, that they want a 1031 exchange into these TIC deals. So it's kind of cool because it gives you more flexibility as far as your exit and entry and things like that. So it's different than a syndication, but it's a cool strategy.
So what's the downside?
The downside is that you have a lot of liability as far as like I said, Whitney, everybody needs to be active. So what we're doing is we're sending constant investor updates, and we have some of our members in the LLCs who are not the managers are on our property management phone calls. And you need to really trust these people, because if for some reason they get ticked off and they feel like you're not informing them or keeping them up to date, well, then this could be seen as a security, because a security is when you take somebody's money and they're passive. That's why with a syndication like you do, Whitney, you have to have a PPM signed, subscription docs, all that stuff.
That's right.
The TIC is completely different. So you need to really trust your partners, because not only are the members at risk of being a security, but your managing partners, because the manager of each LLC is in control of that LLC. So there's 3 TIC LLCs for us. We need to unanimously agree on everything, even though the ownership equity pro rata may not be equal. So you need to trust your partners, have the same type of mentality. And that is the risk. So there's pros and cons to it. Whereas in a syndication, you may have a few GPs, and all those passives basically have no control. They just put their money in and they sign off their control with that PPM and subscription docs.
So why do a tenant in common as opposed to just, what people refer to as a JV deal? Just like partnering on a deal, with these same people.
Yeah, good question. So at the time, we didn't really know what we were going to do. We had this pressure to raise this 1.4 million. And when Elisa said she could bring over 600K with a 1031 exchange and doing the TIC, then we said, okay, let's do it. So we called our transactional attorney, and he kind of went through all these legalities that we just discussed. And so we basically went through all these different scenarios, and we said, you know what, this could be a good option if we want to build this equity and then 1031 exchange again into the next deal. Because the cool thing about this TIC structure as well is, so for example, I have 3 partners in my LLC, right? So there's 4 of us total in my 1 TIC LLC. Well, when we exit and say we're just going to go buy our own deal and 1031 exchange, well, if one of those guys says, hey, I don't want a 1031 to the next deal, I want out. Well, then the other 3 of us can buy him out of his shares, and he gets cashed out and pays capital gains, and then we can continue and proceed to do the 1031. And so that's basically the 1031 benefits and deferring the capital gains was our biggest reason for doing it, because basically all of our goals was to have that passive income. Whereas, as you know, Whitney, with multifamily syndication, you're essentially doing like a longer term flip. That's what these are. You're doing a value add plan, and in 2 to 5 years, most people it's a hot potato because we don't know where the market's going to go. And so once you've realized those returns, exit and get rid of it, which is what we're doing too, which is fine. It's a good equity multiple, but it's a different strategy.
No, I appreciate you elaborating on that, and also talking about it's important that all those people, all those partners are on the same page, and because they're getting to make decisions as well. They're on those calls, and you want to make sure that there's somebody you would partner with long term as well, because you are, and that entity is going to roll 1031 into something else, so you're going to be with them for probably a good while. So anyway, some great points there, and Unfortunately, we got to move on. But Zach, what would you say is the number one thing that's contributed to this success? I mean, you've done it in a very short amount of time. I know. At first, it took those 9 months, and that was probably like, you were wondering, is this going to happen? Did I make the right decision? But then all of a sudden, you're picking up some traction. But what was the one thing that really made this happen for you?
Yeah, no, that's a great question because there was a lot of adversity those first 9 months, and now we've been fortunate to roll. So I think honestly, it's just been a combination of like my faith, basically my habits and determination. I read a book last summer. You may have heard of it or probably read it, Whitney. It's basically Miracle Morning for Millionaires. And so once I started doing that, I used to stay up really late, and now I wake up at like 4:30 every day, 4:35, and basically I go through my routine where I'll wake up early, drink a bunch of water, pray, journal, eat, and do a quick workout. And when I do that, I feel like I have so much more energy and confidence to attack these things because this is scary stuff. You know what I mean? When you're constantly pushing your comfort zone. Like I get nervous all the time. I was nervous to do this podcast. You know what I mean? So you always have to do these things. It just gives you confidence and keep pushing. And so for me, I feel like I went through so much adversity. And there were so many days where I woke up like, what am I even doing? Like, I thought, should I go back into the healthcare? I can make a bunch of money. I don't have to worry about all this stress and ego, basically. Because people are like asking, like, what are you doing? Because you're going to have family members, friends who think that you're an idiot. You know what I mean? For doing that. And so I went through all that adversity. And so the fact that I got through that and got that first deal, now I just don't want to stop. I just want to relentlessly attack because I know what the flip side looks like. So every time we get a deal, I feel so fortunate. You know what I mean? And keep rolling with it.
Yeah. Yeah. And tell me, the name of that book was Miracle Morning for Millionaires?
Correct. Yeah. Hal Elrod, Elrod, Miracle Morning. Yeah. That's a great book.
I was wondering if it was that book, The Miracle Morning.
I think the Millionaires one is like the second edition. It's the same thing. You could read Miracle Morning. That's the real important part.
Okay. I appreciate too you elaborating on, your faith, your habits and just the determination. And what were a couple big habit changes that have helped you? Besides getting in bed early and getting in bed early and getting up early.
Yeah, honestly, it's just, I've been eating right. Sleep has been a huge thing. And then it's basically just scheduling out what you're going to do too. I think if you can schedule stuff out the night before or during the weekend, and when you don't have a deal and you're like, okay, what am I going to be doing? Then you just need to make goals for the week. Underwrite 3 or 5 deals, 2 or a few deals. You just need to get out there and just get in front of it. Because it's funny, this portfolio deal, this was a perfect example. Like we set up a tour with a broker. It was like a 250 unit deal. And I never met this broker, but I knew he was a top broker. And we had just gotten the 36 units. So I wanted to meet him. And you got a little bit of confidence. You got the first deal. So start cranking it. Well, we get out there and this is just a ghetto area of Phoenix. So like right when we get them, like, oh, there's no way we're buying this deal. But we take all the pictures and make it seem like we're interested. And at the end, I was like, honestly, told the broker, we're not too interested in this. Do you have anything else? And he's like, well, yeah, we actually have a portfolio of a couple deals that we just brought out. And I had no idea about it. I didn't get the email or anything. So we drove right over to them, my partner and I, Robert, and we walked the properties and he wasn't even there. And then we underwrite it and everything. And sure enough, it works. And it's like finding a needle in a haystack. Across the country, as you know, Whitney, it's finding a needle in a haystack. That's why it's so hard and you face so much adversity doing this multifamily. But this deal actually penciled, especially in Phoenix, because the cap rates are so compressed. It's very expensive here. But this deal worked. And so we put it on an offer, and then we got into best and final, and then we won the deal. You know what I mean? So just little things like that. We would have never known about the deal if we didn't set up a tour with the broker for a deal that we didn't want anyways. You just never know what these opportunities will come.
Nice. So. What's been the hardest part for you through this syndication journey?
The hardest part is just the mind shift, because you're not. So the funny thing is, like, you can listen to a lot of podcasts and people will say like, oh, syndication is so great. You just use other people's money and it's super easy. And it's not, because you're not making any money like the whole time. And you actually do need to front a lot of this money. So you have to have the mindset of I'm investing in myself and my own career, because this is several thousands of dollars, as you know, Whitney. When you're putting up hard money, that's a ton of money. You're looking at, for us, we're looking at like 50 to 100K each of our own money that we've busted our butt to save up. You're looking at SEC attorney fees, lender fees. So before I had like tons of money stacked up in my checking account, and now it's constantly gone. It's all tied up in deals. And whenever I have money, I'm like giving it to like lender application fees or whatever. But it's exciting. You know what I mean? Because that's what I knew I wanted. And so the toughest thing is just shifting your mindset of how you think about money and kind of where you're going.
What's a way that you've recently improved your business that we could apply to ours?
Yeah, the biggest thing I think for me is initially I was trying to learn every component of it and trying to do it all. And it's so overwhelming. And for me, like I got the MBA and I understand the financials and all the accounting and economics, but I hate doing that. Like I hate sitting in front of spreadsheets. It's not my passion. And so I wasn't being as productive because I didn't want to underwrite deals. You know what I mean? And so what I did is I found complementary partners, fortunately, through this journey. And I have one partner, his name is Bikram, and he's a CPA and a corporate auditor. So this guy loves numbers, you know what I mean? But he doesn't like talking to people as much. And I like talking to people and getting out there. And so we're like the perfect complement. And so the biggest thing was you don't have to do it all. You need to find people who have skill sets that are complementary. I had a really good friend who I met at a conference, and for like a month, we were like having weekly phone calls, like going to work together. And we quickly realized we had the exact same skill set. We were both like the acquisition money raiser guys. So we both said, you know what? It doesn't make sense. Even though we're good friends, we get along, we shouldn't partner because we're both missing the piece that we need. So that's the biggest thing is find the pieces that you don't need, and also identify what value you bring to a team for acquiring these deals.
And what's your best advice for caring for investors?
For caring for investors?
Yes.
Just transparency. Just be transparent with them and be honest with them, and they'll be okay. Like for example, this portfolio deal, we got it under contract April 9th, and we should have closed June 10th, and we had all the money and everything was good. The seller is trying to 1031 exchange both of these deals into one big deal. So he had 2 30-day extensions built into the contract, and we thought he would use one of them, but not 2. So we told the investors we're probably going to go out to July 10th. Well, they're already like, okay, my money's going to be sitting in an operating account for 90 days, not collecting any interest or anything. Well, then he exercised just a few weeks ago. He exercised the other 30-day extension. It took us out to August. And so I knew there was going to be investors who are frustrated because they've got $50K sitting in an account all this time. So I immediately start calling all them up, say, hey, I'm so sorry. He just exercised the extension. There's nothing we can do. And some of them are frustrated, but they appreciate that you tell them quickly so that they have the expectation. So I think just be honest, because stuff's going to go wrong. And I mean, to protect yourself legally, you need to always be transparent. But I mean, it's just the relationship component too. Like the faster you can update them, the better.
Great. Well, Zach, unfortunately, we are running out of time, but tell the listeners, how do you like to give back?
I like to give back. So Grace and I, we're both Christian. We believe Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior. We go to Scottsdale Bible Church here, and we volunteer there. We're going to be doing like a mission later this year, and this is going to be our first mission. And so that's what we've really just felt fortunate to have all this success after getting it going. So we're going to start doing more stuff. We go to church every Sunday, but we know we need to really give back to the community. We did some volunteering last year at like a homeless shelter, which kind of opened up our eyes too. So that's the big thing for us is when you're successful, then just really give it back to the community. And it sounds cliche, but when you go through the adversity and you've been successful, like I feel like I had success at an early age, you realize like what's important is like people, because the money really doesn't make you happy. So
awesome. Appreciate you sharing that, Zach. And how can the listeners get in touch with you and learn more about your business?
Yeah, absolutely. You guys can just text me or call me. I'm very accessible. My cell phone is 602-859-5458. Once again, 602-859-5458. Shoot me an email. It's Zach, Z-A-C-H, at zhmultifamily.com.
Great. Zach, I've really appreciated you being on the show. I've enjoyed learning your story. I mean, just quitting your job and making it happen and going through that. It's awesome. I know the listeners can relate to that. Appreciate the listeners being with us today and every day. I hope you'll be back tomorrow. I hope you'll leave us a rating review and share the show. Go to LifeBridge Capital and connect with me. I'd be happy to help you any way I can. We'll schedule a call. And join the Facebook group so we can all learn from experts like Zach, and we will talk to each of you tomorrow.
Thank you for listening to the Real Estate Syndication Show, brought to you by LifeBridge Capital. LifeBridge Capital works with investors nationwide to invest in real estate, while also donating 50% of its profits to assist parents who are committing to adoption. LifeBridge Capital, making a difference, one investor and one child at a time. Connect online at www.lifebridgecapital.com for free material and videos to further your success.